Hey, it's Ethan, and in this episode we'll be discussing Batman: The Enemy Within. It's the 2017 sequel to 2016's Batman: The Telltale series, and it's honestly one of the best Batman games I've ever played, period. And I think it makes sense for me to talk about this since last year around this time I talked about the first game. But with that out of the way, let's finally talk more about Batman: The Enemy Within. So, Batman: The Telltale series was released in August 2016 to a critical and commercial success, so it made sense for Telltale to make a sequel. Well, about a year later, Batman: The Enemy Within was released on August 8, 2017 for the PS4, Xbox One, PC, mobile devices, and a Nintendo Switch port later on. And that's basically all I can find about this game's development history. Now, prior to this episode, I had only played through the entire game once, but unlike last year when I was just talking about the story based on my choices, I did two different playthroughs this time around to talk about both endings and the other major plot points, but I think it's now time for me to explain my full thoughts and opinions on Batman: The Enemy Within. When we launched the game, we were presented with 5 episodes just like last time, with the first one being the Enigma, which is set 1 year after the events of the first game. It starts out with Bruce Wayne, which is voiced by Troy Baker once again, as he recaps what happened in the previous game, and we could hear Jack Ryder giving a news report, and we also see a man dressed in green laughing as the camera pans out. Anyway, it cuts to a casino called the Virgo, where we play as Bruce Wayne talking to Alfred as Bruce Wayne goes to investigate a man named Rudy Mori as he hacks into his cell phone but gets stopped by a woman.
So, I've been sitting over there wondering, what's Bruce Wayne doing in a place like this? I figured you went to fancier casinos. Someplace where only high rollers go.
Sorry to be blunt, but you're not my type.
Excuse me?
No, really, I've got pretty specific tastes.
Get over yourself, Bruce. I was just trying to be friendly.
I definitely agree with Bruce on that one. I mean, she is definitely not my type, but let's just say, if you know, you know.
You? What in the hell are you doing here?
Stop me if you've heard this one before. I begin and have no end. And I end all that begins. Who am I?
I don't give a damn. I told you 10 times. Our arrangement is over.
Death, Mori. I am death.
Something's happening, and it doesn't look like a deal.
The man in the hood. I remember him from your father's time. I think that's Riddler.
Honestly, if you ask me, I'm just glad that this is an Arkham Riddler and that he isn't forcing us to collect hundreds of little small Riddler trophies, if you know what I mean. Riddler ends up killing someone and bullets start to fly as Bruce ends up taking out a gunman in front of the woman from earlier and contacts Gordon and suits up as Batman. A few minutes later, Bruce enters the casino as Batman and reveals himself to the Riddler while the GCPD enters the building. Batman ends up confronting Riddler and gives Batman some kind of box, but he ends up escaping and causing some kind of chandelier to fall down, but Batman is able to save it just in time.
You should have called us before going in, Gordon.
Waller?
After all, we're here to help.
Amanda Waller basically insults Batman and Gordon, and then we're introduced to Special Agent Amon Vesta, who ends up giving Batman important information on the Riddler and says that she also grew up in Gotham, and Waller ends up threatening Bruce again and heads back to the Batcave to meet Alfred to figure out what Riddler's device is all about, but ends up asking Lucius Fox to help him at Wayne Tower to figure it out. Once Bruce arrives at Wayne Tower, he and Lucius Fox start to investigate Riddler's puzzle box before they're interrupted by Tiffany Fox, Lucius Fox's daughter, since it's her first day working at Wayne Enterprises, and gives Bruce a small drone as a gift and starts playing around with Riddler's puzzle and agrees to help them with it.
I never told her, Told her what I really do at Wayne Enterprises, what we do. If you're willing to pull her into this Riddler project, why not consider bringing her into the fold? Into the mission? We're going to need help if we're going to be dealing with the likes of Riddler.
You know how dangerous our business is. I couldn't live with myself if something happened to Tiffany. I'm just gonna have to say no.
It's your secret to tell.
Yes, it is.
May I just say, burdens are lighter when carried by many.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing that they're not letting Tiffany help them, because knowing Gotham and knowing Riddler, who knows what can go wrong. Well, they end up getting interrupted by Agent Avesta and her partner Blake, and Bruce gets asked a couple of weird questions about his ties to criminals in Arkham Asylum, with one of them being John Doe from the last game, and then all of a sudden are advised to evacuate the building.
Bruce, get my daughter out of the building. Get yourself out.
What are you talking? What did you figure out?
I've solved the Riddler's puzzle, Bruce. Riddler really pulled a good one over on us.
Lucius, please tell me what's wrong.
Tell Tiffany that I love her. That I'm sorry I wasn't around more.
Lucius?
We really made a difference, didn't we, Batman?
Lucius! Lucius! No!
Even though I've seen this scene like dozens of times at this point, it honestly still spooks me to this day. A few days then go by, and then we are taken to Divinity Church, where Lucius Fox's funeral is being held, as Bruce tries to comfort Tiffany, and then all of a sudden hears the voice of John Doe, and ends up catching up with him, as John explains that he needs a favor from Bruce to meet his new friend group, and that he also explains that he has a grudge against the Riddler, as Bruce tries to convince John to help him find the Riddler because he was responsible for Lucius's death. So John ends up giving Bruce a lead, which he then takes it to Gordon as Batman, and they eventually end up finding Riddler's secret hideout. Later on, once Batman and Gordon arrive at Riddler's secret hideout, they end up discovering a dead body of one of Waller's agents and a list of phone numbers of the agents, among other things, while they try to solve a puzzle in one of Riddler's cages and nearly go deaf as a result, but are able to find a missile as reward. And then...
Why don't you tell Gordon here what happened to Lucius Fox? Watch out, Commissioner. For all his preaching, Batman knows when to sacrifice a pawn to win the game. It was a smart move. Getting out of the way of the blast. Something only a pragmatist would do.
Don't you dare put your crimes on me.
Come on, Batman. I gave the puzzle to you, didn't I? It's not my fault you couldn't solve it. Look at Gordon. He doesn't know what to make of any of it. Trust is hard-earned, yet easily lost, isn't it? Come on now. Don't get your tights in a twist. I knew you weren't sharp enough to do it on purpose. There's no room at the top for schoolboys who are too squeamish to fight in the gutter. You don't have what it takes to be a player in this town. Not without giving up those values you hold so dear. Game on!
I'm pretty sure that Commissioner Gordon is getting pretty close to finally figuring out Batman's identity. After that, Batman and Gordon talk about what just happened, as Gordon asks Batman about Fox, as he explains to him that he was an ally of Batman, and Gordon gets curious as a result, as Batman then makes his way back to the Batcave. Once Bruce arrives back at the Batcave, he and Alfred talk about how Gordon can possibly figure out his identity, and also try to figure out the missile that Batman found at Riddler's hideout. They also do realize that Riddler has been targeting the agents with missiles using their cell phones, which Bruce is able to block using an audio sample from the video that Lucius sent him before his death, and the drone that Tiffany gave him at Wayne Tower. John Doe ends up contacting Bruce about Rudy Mori from earlier in the episode, and says that he can possibly help with Riddler's location. Alfred also recommends Riddler's Lieutenant Eli Noble, which has been locked up at GCPD, and thinks Eli can help out with Riddler's location. You then get the choice to either go see Mori as Bruce or interrogate Eli as Batman. If you choose Mori, Bruce will go back to the casino from the beginning to talk to Mori and explain to him that he wants information on Riddler, since he is the one responsible for killing one of Bruce's employees. Mori says that he sold Riddler weapons and asks Bruce to sign up on a vacation trip for Mori to get him out of Gotham and away from the agency watching him. If you choose Eli, Batman will meet up with Waller at GCPD and interrogate Noble about Riddler's location, and uses a pinging sound that Riddler's boxes make to scare him as he gives him the location of a boat called the Lady of Dublin, which is where Riddler has been hiding out on. Once Batman arrives at the Lady of Dublin, he ends up taking out some of Riddler's goons and confronting Riddler himself. He then discovers Agent Avesta and a bunch of other agents locked up in cages. Batman is able to save Avesta, but the two end up in a big cage and are forced to answer a few riddles. If they answer the 3 riddles correctly, they will get a blast from one of Riddler's sound device things, which will cause Avesta to go deaf, but if you answer them wrong, one of the other agents will die. Batman, however, is able to use the small drone that Tiffany gave him to direct the missiles to blow up the cage, allowing for him and Avesta to be safe and also escape. Batman is able to beat up the Riddler and capture him, as Riddler explains to Batman that he has other allies involved.
They broke the pact.
The pact?
After Riddler's death, the GCPD and Amanda Waller's agency arrive as Gordon gets mad at Batman for interrogating Eli, and Waller has a disagreement with Gordon. Waller then talks to Batman about Riddler's other friends, and then...
A man who lives on both sides of the line and knows exactly when to cross it. Yes, you and I will be working together very closely. Bruce Wayne.
Well, that is the end of episode 1. It's a pretty solid episode, and it definitely sets up a lot of things that'll make sense later on. And here's my question. What's Waller gonna do with Batman's identity now that she knows? Episode 2 is called The Pact, and it starts out moments after episode 1, while Batman gives a small monologue detailing what happened a few moments ago. Waller explains that she needs both Bruce Wayne and Batman in order to help protect the city, but all of a sudden, bombs start going off over the city and Batman goes to investigate a break-in at the GCPD arsenal. Once Batman arrives at the GCPD arsenal, he ends up silently taking out a few thugs, rescuing a truck driver, and runs into this universe's version of Bane, which nearly kills him. You are then given the choice to either call Waller or Gordon for help. Batman eventually gets back to the Batcave and has Alfred patch him up as they investigate the drug that killed Riddler and the other bombings throughout the city that night. Bruce and Alfred do realize that John Doe is possibly involved with Riddler, so Bruce tracks him to the stacked deck and ends up asking him what he knows about Riddler, but Bruce ends up fighting one of John's friends, and John admits that he has a crush on someone as they attempt to hijack a car, which has us be introduced to this universe's version of Harley Quinn, and basically wants us to steal something from Wayne Tower, which will unlock half the security systems in Gotham. So Bruce ends up breaking into his secret lab with John and Harley, but discovers that Tiffany Fox broke in before them and nearly gets killed by Harley as a result. Bruce ends up briefly coming back to Wayne Manor to talk to Alfred about Tiffany and what happened at Wayne Tower, but the bat signal goes off and Batman is summoned to GCPD and talks to Gordon and Waller about who should run the GCPD and how Waller knows Batman's secret identity. Waller ends up talking to Batman about Avesta and how Bruce is going to get involved with Riddler's gang, as she gives him a bad version of Venom to mess with Bane, as Bruce then gets captured by Bane's men. Bruce wakes up a little while later as he is surrounded by Harley, Bane, and John as he sets off an EMP that they stole from Wayne Tower as a distraction, but this causes Mr. Freeze to almost kill Bruce, but he is able to fix it. After that, Harley ends up having a conversation with Bruce about what happened at Wayne Tower and about a mission later that night, which Bruce ends up informing Waller about what's going on, but sets off an EMP, causing all communication to be disrupted, but they're able to steal what they plan, but Harley gets captured by the GCPD as a result. Once they do arrive back at the hideout, they discover that they ended up stealing Riddler's dead body. And then...
At least now, we finally have everything we need. Riddler will open the path to us once the thief brings the last piece.
I'll open any path for the right price.
Oh hey, it's that one girl from the last game, if you know what I mean. But anyway, that was the end of episode 2, and I think it was pretty solid. It's just that I thought it dragged on a little bit longer than I think it should have at times. But anyway, on to episode 3. Episode 3 starts out with Bruce Wayne giving a monologue, and Catwoman realizes that Bruce Wayne is involved with the PACT. Catwoman, however, explains that she needs a scan of his eyes to get past the security system of his older employer. A few minutes later, Harley Quinn arrives back at the hideout and explains that there's going to be a change in who's going to be running operations, and explains that Riddler's laptop is encrypted and that she needs the location of his employer or the black site. So she sends Bruce, John, and Selina back to Riddler's hideout from episode 1, and they end up running into Detective Bullock, but John knocks him out. Once they investigate Riddler's hideout, Bruce and Selina discover Riddler's computer and find out about a project called Project Lotus at the Sanctus facility. Selina realizes what Sanctus is and puts all the blame on herself for Riddler and Lucius's death, causing her and Bruce to fight over who's going to get Harley's laptop first, while John sees them fight. Selina is however able to get away, and Bruce and John end up at a cafe, and John asks Bruce on how he should speak to Harley, and they come to an agreement that John will steal the laptop from Harley and give it to Bruce, but the bat signal appears, and of course Bruce says that he has to leave. A few minutes later, Batman arrives at the GCPD and finds Gordon on the roof. He asks Batman to why he wasn't involved with the convoy from the other night, and explains that he thinks that Lucius Fox has been doing shady work at Wayne Tower, but Batman explains that he is a good person. And...
I know your friend Catwoman's in town. Got a rap sheet that'll put her away for life. Maybe I can't move on Bruce Wayne, but I can move on her. I should have done this a year ago.
I can't ask you to break the law, Jim.
Don't make me laugh. As soon as I get back to the office, I'm sending out a task force after her. And you better not tell her we're coming.
Once Gordon leaves, the player has the decision to either warn Catwoman about the GCPD or not. John all of a sudden appears on the roof and explains to Batman that he could get Harley's laptop and to meet him in an alleyway in Gotham. Sometime later, Bruce goes back to the subway station and starts talking to the other members as Harley and Bane start an argument, but Bruce explains that they found Project Lotus as John tries convincing Harley that he can help her with anything, as Harley takes Bruce aside and tells him to not be that friendly with John. However, if you warn Selina about the GCPD, she will steal the laptop and Bruce will meet her on the roof of the mayor's office and try to convince her to give him the laptop and to come home with him as he shows her the Batcave. If you do not warn her, John will give Batman the laptop outside the sack deck and ask Batman to show him how to throw batarangs. Selina will be at Wayne Manor but will be all bruised up because she was running away from the GCPD, but you can still show her the Batcave as well. Once Bruce and Selina are able to crack Riddler's laptop, they find out about a location called the Bodhi Spa, which is the presumed location of the Black Site. They also discovered that Sanctus was doing illegal human experiments using a drug called the Lotus virus, and that Sanctus was originally part of Waller's agency years prior. So Bruce ends up meeting with Waller at Wayne Tower to discuss what he found. Sometime later, Bruce enters his office at Wayne Tower and finds Tiffany Fox inside, but all of a sudden is arrested by the GCPD moments later. However, Waller and Avesta walk in as Waller forces Gordon to release Bruce as she takes Gordon's privileges away from being the commissioner. After Waller and Gordon leave, Tiffany asks Bruce what was going on and apologizes for calling the cops, and you're given the decision to tell her that you are Batman or not, which will change the story later on. After that, Waller and Avesta try to explain to Bruce what Sanctus is, and they explain that they need Bruce to work with Harley and the others to help save the city from the Lotus virus. Later that day, Bruce goes to the Bodhi Spa to investigate what it is, but is spotted by Bane and thinks Bruce is a traitor and knocks him out. Once Bruce wakes up from being knocked out by Bane, he and Harley have a conversation about her past and who stole Riddler's laptop, because Harley believes that either Bruce or Selina are responsible. If you pick Bruce, he'll be thrown into a freeze chamber created by Mr. Freeze, but if you blame Catwoman, she'll be thrown into one of Riddler's death chambers, and Bruce will go with them to the Bodhi Spa, and that is the end of episode 3. Now, depending on who you chose to blame for stealing the laptop will determine the opening of episode 4, but overall episode 3 was pretty solid. It's just that I felt like it dragged on a bit at times, just like episode 2, but I think it was the best episode up until this point. So let's move on to episode 4. Episode 4 starts out in 2 different ways depending on who you chose at the end of episode 3. If you chose Bruce to take the blame, he'll be locked up in one of Mr. Freeze's freeze chambers and will have to get out by using an EMP that Harley stole from episode 2 to break open the locks. In that decision, you will go to the Bodhi Spa as Batman and run into Catwoman, which can help you take down the PACT. If you choose to blame Selina, she'll be put into one of Riddler's death traps, and Bruce will help the PACT infiltrate the Bodhi Spa as he will go ahead of them and destroy the virus himself. No matter which choice you pick, Waller and the agency will show up and criticize either Bruce or Batman on what happened, and you get to interrogate Mr. Freeze about Harley Quinn's location. After that, Avesta joins Bruce on their way back to the PACT's hideout to find samples of the Lotus virus, but find out that Riddler's body has been decaying faster than they thought, and discover John inside of Harley's office and try to convince him to help them find Harley. Upon arrival to the Batcave, Bruce spots Alfred passed out on the floor as a result of Alfred's stress on worrying about Bruce. A few minutes later, they go upstairs to Wayne Manor and talk to Tiffany, but depending on what you said to her in episode 3 at Bruce's office will determine how she is going to respond. If you told her about Bruce being Batman, she'll talk about making her own suit and making a gun for Bruce, but Bruce turns this down since he doesn't use guns. If you did not tell her that Bruce is Batman, she'll try to convince Bruce that she wants to work for Amanda Waller and the agency as one of her agents, but you can tell her that you are Batman at that part of the game and she'll work with you. But in both scenarios, Bruce will get a text from John Doe asking him to meet him at an old amusement park on the outskirts of Gotham City. Once Bruce arrives at the old amusement park, he'll walk through a short, creepy hallway and eventually find John sitting in the dark with a bunch of dead bodies of agency members around him. John says that they apparently were looking for Harley and just opened fire without warning, which caused John to lose control and kill all of them, as John reveals this secret to Bruce.
John,
I could have had you, but for that sucker punch. Didn't think Batman fought dirty like that.
What?
You forget I know you, Bruce. The real you. Always hiding behind some kind of mask. Playboy, businessman, criminal. Bat. Can't fool a friend. Someone who really takes the time to look.
Well done, John. You figured it out. Have to say I'm impressed.
Only because you underestimate me. I never miss a trick. It all gets filed away up here.
You know, I'm really not that surprised that John figured out that Bruce is Batman, judging by how Bruce wanted to track down the Riddler really bad, and also by how he just abruptly left the cafe after the bat signal appeared. I mean, he basically gave it away at that point. Anyway, John asks Bruce if he still has some faith in him, and if you tell John that Bruce doesn't, you will play as Batman in the next part. But if you do still have some faith in John, you will play as Bruce. If you play as Batman, Bruce will suit up as Batman on the bridge and intervene on a standoff between the agency, the GCPD, and Harley Quinn. Bruce will try to convince Harley to not blow up the bridge as she asks for Riddler's blood to help use with the Lotus virus, since Riddler is the only known survivor of the virus, but Waller explains that someone in the agency destroyed Riddler's blood, so she won't be able to do it, but it was actually Agent Avesta who destroyed it. Moments later, John shows up, and Harley eventually blows the bridge, while her and John escape into the water below. If you chose the option to still trust John, you will show up to the bridge as Bruce, and both Bruce and John will try to convince Harley to not blow up the bridge. John is able to distract Harley enough for her to get arrested, and then John goes crazy as a result and forces him and Bruce to fight off the agency and the GCPD together, with John saying that he and Batman will bring justice to the city as he drops off the bridge into the water below. Well, that is the end of episode 4, and I gotta say, it's probably the best episode that we played through so far. It had some really good story moments, some great pacing, and it was overall just really enjoyable to play through. Now, depending on what you chose for John, to either make him go down the villain or the vigilante path, will give you a completely different outcome, so it's worth playing through the game twice. But anyway, let's talk about episode 5. First, I'll be explaining it from the villain perspective. Episode 5 starts out with a voicemail from John to Bruce about 3 weeks after the events on the bridge, as we see Detective Harley Bullock as he follows some guy in a clown costume as the screen then goes black, and then we play as Batman surrounded by a bunch of GCPD officers. But basically, Bullock has a bomb planted inside of him, and I don't really want to show it since it's a bit too gory for YouTube, so I recommend playing it for yourself or watch other creators' footage instead. But Bruce runs into Gordon and finds a signed shipment of weapons by one of his top employees at Wayne Enterprises. Hours later, Bruce ends up at Wayne Tower to discuss what he found at the crime scene as Batman, but all of a sudden gets interrupted by Harley and John, now known as the Joker, as they set off the Lotus virus, killing everyone in Wayne Tower, with only Bruce and Tiffany surviving. Bruce and Tiffany are able to get into Bruce's secret lab to scan possible substance traces from one of John's handkerchiefs and are able to point it to Divinity Church, where Batman and Avesta find a bomb. Once the bomb is defused, he gets an urgent call from Gordon saying that he has a lead on the Joker at Ace Chemicals and rushes over to Ace. Once Bruce arrives at Ace Chemicals, he finds Gordon tied up and then gets surrounded by the Joker's men and then Joker himself, and Gordon reveals that Batman was bait for Joker to give Gordon the location of the other virus bombs throughout the city, and then gets knocked out and wakes up in the amusement park with Selena. Bruce and Selena end up solving a few puzzles and discover that Tiffany Fox has been captured along with Alfred, as Joker and Harley force them to play Never Have I Ever, with Tiffany admitting that she is the one who killed Riddler, and a fight breaks out between all of them as Bruce goes to confront Joker and nearly kills him. Sometime after, Bruce wakes up in the back of an ambulance with Waller beside him, and Waller basically talks about how good of a job Bruce did, and Bruce asks to give Avesta a job at Wayne Tower and to wipe Catwoman's criminal record before returning home to talk to Alfred about him leaving for good, and the player is given the decision to keep being Batman or to give up Batman and have Alfred stay, and that's basically the end of episode 5's villain ending. Now, if you got the vigilante ending for John, he'll give you a monologue just like the other intro, but it shows Batman arriving outside of Riddler's old hideout as he is ambushed by Waller's agents, but is rescued by John, but calls himself Joker, but considers himself a vigilante instead. However, Bane drops in from a crate created by the agency and is now working for Waller to take down Batman, but is more powerful than ever. Batman and Joker are able to take Bane down, but Batman gets severely injured and calls Alfred to help him get patched up. When that's going on, Waller calls Bruce, threatening to reveal his identity to the world if he doesn't deliver the virus or John Doe to Waller at the GCPD within 2 hours, and calls Agent Avesta for help as he offers her a job at Wayne Tower and gives Batman some blackmail on Waller in return. Moments later after that, Waller shows up behind them and it is revealed that the entire PACT is working for the agency, even including Catwoman. Waller makes a deal that she'll get out of Gotham and release Catwoman only if Batman surrenders John Doe to Waller to be arrested, which John overhears them and causes everyone to fight each other, causing the GCPD to collapse, but Batman is rescued by either Avesta or Catwoman, depending on certain choices. Sometime later, Bruce wakes up inside the Batcave with Alfred beside him as he plans to go take down the Joker, but we see that Tiffany has created a suit to help fight crime as they go back to Riddler's hideout to investigate where John Doe could have possibly run off to because he also took Waller as a hostage. They do end up running into Jim Gordon and Harley Quinn and eventually track Joker to Ace Chemicals, where there is a big standoff between Joker, Batman, and Waller, and Tiffany reveals again that she killed Riddler. Those two end up fighting each other some more before laying down inside of a control room. Later on, Batman wakes up in the back of an ambulance and talks to both Waller and Gordon and asks Waller to leave Gotham and asks Jim to consider getting his old job back. The next part also happens in the other ending as well, as Batman tracks Tiffany to the roof of the mayor's office and confronts her about Riddler's death, as he has the option to either bring her in as a partner to teach her some lessons or to have her be pursued by the police, and the ending at Wayne Manor is the same as the other ending. So what about gameplay? Well, most of the time is spent pressing buttons to pick dialogue, with usually 4 different choices and quite a few quick time events and the occasional walk around certain area to progress. It's not that hard at all, but it definitely feels like a point and click game at times and it gets repetitive after a while, but it visually looks pretty clean overall, and I like how it gives off this comic book like look just like the last game and some other Telltale games. I played on PS4 and did encounter some frame drops and a few glitches then and there, but it wasn't that bad overall. There is also the smaller extras in the main menu if you're into that, and the Shadows mode, which is just a reshade of the entire game, but besides the main story, there's nothing else to really do. Now that is Batman the Enemy Within. It's honestly such an underrated Batman game, and I honestly forgot how good Telltale games are in general, considering that there isn't a whole lot of gameplay. But if you're into these types of games, or you just like other superhero games in general, definitely give this one a shot. But I honestly wish that they made a third game.